More Sure Word. Kingdoms Overview. Today, we'll take an overview of the timelines in Daniel, revealing the rise and fall of kingdoms and kings. But first, let's get some context. King Solomon apostatized because of his love of many strange women, resulting in the split of the kingdom under his son Rehoboam's reign. You can read about this in 1 Kings 11, 1-13, and chapter 12. The northern 10 tribes, Israel, followed Jeroboam, who initiated a series of evil kings, leading to their dispersal by the Assyrian kingdom. You can read about this in 2 Kings 17. The southern 2 tribes and Levites, collectively known as Judah, remained with David's descendants as their kings, in fulfillment of God's promise to David in 2 Samuel 7, 8-17. Some of their kings were good and others evil. Some of the good kings made mistakes, and some of the evil kings repented. One such good king was Hezekiah, who God healed, but he did not give God glory when the nations sent representatives to wish him well on his miracle. His evil son, Manasseh, murdered many innocent people, but repented, so the Lord held off on fulfilling the judgment. However, the sins of Judah under Manasseh were not forgotten, neither was Hezekiah's failure. Judah had a few more kings, but the last one was extremely defiant, so the judgment promised to Hezekiah was fulfilled in his reign. Babylon besieged Judah and took the best and brightest of Judah's youth into captivity. Among the captives were Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. It was in the context of life in captivity that Daniel received visions of the future leading up to the end of the world. Babylonian captivity. Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah determined in their hearts to live pure lives while in Babylon, refusing to eat the king's unclean food. God blessed them with health and wisdom above all the other captives from Judah. Nebuchadnezzar enrolled them in training to join the ranks of the wise men in Babylon. One night, King Nebuchadnezzar had a dream that he could not remember the next day, but he knew it was important. He summoned his wise men to tell him his dream and the interpretation. When they could not, he made a decree that all the wise men, including the trainees, should die. When Daniel heard this, he requested more time, and it was granted. He told Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah what was about to befall them. Together they prayed and went to sleep. That night the Lord revealed Nebuchadnezzar's dream to Daniel with the interpretation. The next day, Daniel was presented to the king to give the dream and the interpretation. Nebuchadnezzar's dream. Daniel was admitted into the king's presence to reveal the king's dream and the interpretation. Daniel began his presentation to the king by praising the God of heaven, who reveals secrets to men. Then he told the king that he was thinking about the future of his kingdom the night he had the dream. Then he described the dream. The king saw an image with a head of gold, chest and arms of silver, belly and thighs of brass, legs of iron, and feet, part of iron, part of clay. Then he saw a stone cut out of a mountain without hands, hit the image at the feet, breaking the image into pieces. The pieces blew away like chaff. The stone then became a great mountain, filling the whole earth. God showed Daniel that each metal in the image represented another world power that would arise and conquer the previous, each one inferior to the conquered kingdom, just as the metals decrease in value. This sequence began with Nebuchadnezzar's kingdom, Babylon. During the time of the feat, however, the previous kingdom would not be conquered. It would break apart into strong and weak portions unable to unite. Then, in the time of the broken kingdom, the God of heaven will set up a kingdom that will never come to an end. Daniel's dream. Now we'll skip over to Daniel chapter 7. In chapter 7, we see recorded a vision of the same timeline of kingdoms that Nebuchadnezzar received, however with more details. This dream was meant for an Israelite and came in the form of animals. In the first year that Belshazzar was in charge of the Babylonian kingdom, Daniel received this dream. Daniel saw the four winds striving over the great sea. From the sea he saw four animals come up. The first was a lion with eagle's wings, that lost its wings, stood up like a man, and received a man's heart. The second was a bear, raised up on one side, with three ribs between its teeth, and it was given the command to devour much flesh. The third was a four-headed leopard with four birds' wings, and it was given dominion. The fourth beast came up. It was so dreadful in appearance, Daniel could not find any known animal with which to compare it. It had iron teeth, it devoured and broke everything in pieces, trampling on anything that was left. This last beast had 10 horns. Among the 10 horns came up a little horn, displacing 3 of the previous 10. This little horn had man's eyes and a mouth speaking great things. Then Daniel saw the thrones cast down, and the Ancient of Days sit. His clothes were white as snow, and his hair was like pure wool. He saw the dreadful beast killed, and his body burned. The other kings lost their dominion, but their lives went on for a season and a time. Daniel's second dream. In Daniel chapter 8, the same timeline is given, however, beginning with the second kingdom. Daniel received this dream in the 3rd year of Belshazzar's administration, shortly before the fall of Babylon, as described in Daniel chapter 5. Daniel saw in the vision that he was by the river Ulai. In front of the river he saw a ram with 2 high horns, but one was higher than the other. The higher horn came up second. The ram pushed toward the west, the north, and the south and dominated. Then Daniel saw a he-goat with a single distinct horn between its eyes, attack the ram and break the ram's horns, leaving it powerless. The goat trampled the ram, and no one could help the ram. The goat became great. Then, in the heights of its strength, the notable horn broke off, and 4 prominent horns came up in its place, towards the 4 winds of heaven. Then Daniel saw a little horn, come up out of one of them. The horn expanded to the south, to the east, and to the pleasant land. This horn then set its target to heaven, bringing down some of the stars of heaven to the ground and trampling them. This horn elevated itself to the position of the prince of the host. He took away the daily, the place of the sanctuary was thrown down, he cast truth to the ground, and this horn prospered. In his dream, Daniel heard two saints discussing how long the sanctuary would be trodden down by this transgression of desolation. The response was, unto 2,300 days, then the sanctuary would be cleansed. That was a lot of information. Let's summarize. For today, we will just align the kingdoms referenced in each of these dreams and identify them. In Daniel chapter 2, we learn that the head of gold was Babylon. Daniel chapter 5 tells the circumstances under which Babylon fell to the Medes and the Persians. Daniel chapter 8 affirms that this dual kingdom succeeded Babylon. This chapter also tells us that the Medes and the Persians were subdued by Greece. The next world-dominating kingdom we know from Scripture is Rome. These nations dominated in the highly populated regions we now know as North Africa, Asia, and Europe. Daniel received and recorded these visions while in captivity under the reigns of Babylon and Medo-Persia. The transitions of power are verified in history, demonstrating that the Bible is of a source that can predict the future. Next time, we'll look at the details Daniel received about the first three kingdoms and their fulfillment.